What's going on, guys? This is Dave Heilman, aka Dynasty Dorks, and this is the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented to you by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. If you sign up today, you bet $100, you're going to get $100 right back at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. State restrictions apply. All right, we're here to talk about some Dynasty receivers brought in. Obviously, got my co-host with me at all times. Brad, how we doing tonight, Brad? Brad, you're on mute, but
I'm apparently living the dream a little too much because I was muted. But I got my baseball, I've got my bourbon, we've got a guest. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, my wife was admiring your collection the other day. My son had a show on, but one of my favorite TikTok follows, Fantasy Blue Chip. Jagger, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Where can we find your work?
Best place is Twitter to find everything. That's where I'm posting at Fantasy Blue Chip. I write at DFF. I make videos for 4for4 Fantasy, and then I'm about to put out some work for Fantasy and Frame. So I'm everywhere right now. So
this guy's doing a lot of pre-draft content. We are not going to have the rookies in the rankings yet, but we will talk a little bit about the rookies just in reference to kind of where we might start seeing them come in. But we're just going to start off. So, Brad, if you want to pull up the slide, let's talk about our consensus top 6 players. Justin Jefferson at 1, Jamar Chase at 2, A.J. Brown at 3, CeeDee Lamb at 4, Jalen Waddle at 5, Garrett Wilson at 6. And I'm going to start out with you, Brad. Explain yourself. You have CeeDee Lamb at number 2.
Hey, look. Longevity, he's proven that he can do it. There was all these questions around CeeDee Lamb going into the last season with Dak Prescott saying, ooh, okay, what are we going to see from CeeDee Lamb with Amari Cooper out of town now? And look, we saw CeeDee Lamb take that bull by the horns and dominate the field. He looked excellent, and I think there's just continued growth for him moving forward. Look, we know the difference between Dave and I get. And, looking at how Dave looks at things, his value is not the wide receiver too. I get that. I'm projecting forward. I expect him to leapfrog Jamar Chase. I'm not dogging Jamar Chase or anything like that. So don't take it that way. He's still number 3. But I just think CeeDee Lamb is a better, well-rounded wide receiver. I think that team's going to be looking to throw the ball a little bit more, moving on from an aging Zeke. We don't know about Tony Pollard. Kellen Moore is out of town, which, to be quite frank, might be a really good move for the passing game in Dallas. So I really like CeeDee Lamb, and I expect him to continue to take that step forward.
Yeah, and to talk about our process a little bit, Brad really is projecting, and for me, I'm doing it more on asset value. Jagger, you got Garrett Wilson all the way up at number 6. I obviously agree right there, but why is Garrett Wilson, who currently doesn't really have a quarterback, deserve to be at the number 6 spot?
And he's actually number 5 for me. I'm even higher. I'm even higher than you are on him. And a lot of that is because I think he's Justin Jefferson, but he has a way worse quarterback situation. Like if you plug in Derek Carr there, his value is through the roof. If you put in Aaron Rodgers there, to me, we're going to be talking about him being the dynasty number 2 sooner than later, even above Jamar Chase. Because Brad, you kind of alluded to like being well-rounded. Like CeeDee Lamb, he fits the profile. You can move him all over the formation, whether it be in the slot or on the outside, just like Justin Jefferson. That is a modern prototypical wide receiver. He may not be DK Metcalf size, but he still has enough of it to where you could put him outside on a fade and he can win deep. If you follow like Matt Harmon, I'm really big into reception perception, and Garrett Wilson is lit up green everywhere. So like to me, if he already performed at this level with Zach Wilson, who is, let's be honest, beyond bad, and then he made Mike White look relevant. Mike White's not that good. Like that's how great Garrett Wilson is. So that's why I'm so high on him. So I guess it's projecting a little bit. Like that's the talent outweighing the situation.
Yeah, and like you said, we could see him get an increase if we get Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr or pretty much anything over there that resembles a good quarterback. And I want to talk about Jalen Waddle, and I do kind of want to ask your guys' opinion on this. I have Waddle at 5 based on the fact of his trade value. But having Jalen Waddle as your number one receiver, it's a little uncomfortable right now. And the reason I say that, last year with Tyreek Hill in the offense, the targets just dissipated, especially at the end of the year. And I thought, like, what's the counterpoint to that? And everyone's going to point to like Tua. And yeah, Tua missed some games, but Tua was on the field for about 13 games this year. And during that time, there was a lot of inconsistencies with Waddle. You only saw 4 wide receiver 1 performances. He had 8 performances where he was a wide receiver 2, and then you had a bunch of where he was wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7. I mean, he was in the 60s, he was in the 90s, and it was just not very comfortable, especially the second half of the year. And I know part of that has to do with Tua being out, but I have him all the way up there at 5, even with Tyreek Hill, even with the little bit of unknown at the quarterback position. Jagger, any thoughts there on Jalen Waddle? I mean, you and I flip-flop with him and Wilson.
You hit on the point exactly. Like, why don't you like Jalen Waddle more? It's like I'm officially at the point where I don't feel great. And like if I have Jalen Waddle and I'm trying to make a run, I might package Jalen Waddle plus to try to go get AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I know some people are incredibly low on CeeDee Lamb. So if I know a guy's low on CeeDee Lamb and I have Waddle, I'm trading Waddle to get CeeDee plus, And a big thing, I don't believe in Tua at all. So like, I don't believe in him physically. I don't believe in the talent. I've never been a Tua guy. So it's like, I've seen Jalen Waddle do it all. I've seen him do do the big plays, and I've seen him be the short route, deke and dunk guy in both seasons. So it's not really him as a talent, but there's just so many question marks with Miami as a whole, and he's smack dab in the middle of it. So.
Yeah, so I have the targets. He had 3 times he had 0 to 3 targets. He had 4 targets twice, 5 targets 7 times, 6 targets twice, 7 targets twice, 9 targets once, and he had 3 times where he was over 10 targets. And with Tua on the field, you're going from 69 yards to 171 to 102.
He had
88.
7 games under 50 yards, not a touchdown in any of those.
Mm-hmm.
He had one exploding game where he had 170 something yards. Whereas if you look on the opposite side of the field, you see Tyreek Hill. I think he had 3 or 4, if I remember, under 50 yards. But he had like 4 just completely explosive games that are week winning games for you. Yeah. So that ebb and flow, you got to be careful about.
Yeah, and it's tough to have 2 guys in the top 12 or top 14 of your dynasty rankings, and then their quarterback is not someone I'm in a mock draft, and he's Tua. You have Tua or like Daniel Jones, it's a Trey Lance. Like it's pretty sketchy around QB 12 and Superflex.
What's funny is like I'm taking a look at all three of our lists here, and then the thing that sticks out to me and like Jalen Waddle is like, what's different from all the rest. And Jalen Waddle is the only one on this list that you would question if they're the number one. No matter where you have everyone else, Jefferson is the number one on their team. Chase is the number one on the team with T. Higgins. AJ Brown is another one who's the number one with Devontae Smith. Garrett Wilson, no question there. Even, Brad's got some different ones with DK Metcalf. Tyreek Hill's the one that we're talking about being the number one on Jalen Waddle. He's a little old for me. I'm like, Leonardo DiCaprio. I want him, 26 and under. If not, I'm breaking up with him.
Well, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Some people call it an ageist. Leo is an ageist. We will talk about Tyreek Hill and DK Metcalf in a second. We're going to check back in with the sponsors, and then we're going to go to our next six players. Sponsored by Leonardo DiCaprio. He said he's looking for 25, 26-year-olds now to prove that he likes older women. WynnBET is the official online sportsbook of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. WynnBET is active in a bunch of states. There are tons of ways to win, including live betting, same-game parlays, a.k.a. WynnBETs. Build your own bet, BYOB. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBET. If you're ready to play, sign up today. You receive a special offer. If you bet $100, you're going to get $100. Limited state availability. Of course, if you hit the biggest long shot parlay of the week, you get $1,000 free credit. So much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in a state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-522-4700. And don't forget about the SGPN merch store. Continues to add new items in the store every day. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com. It's store.sportsgamblingpodcast.com to get your favorite shirts, hats, hoodies, and sweats. We're going to have some draft apparel coming out. But back to our next grouping of players. We have Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Chris Olave, Drake London. And I'll just put them together. Brad, DK Metcalf, and Tyreek Hill, they were in your top six. Why would you put them in the top six and not in this range?
Yeah, for me, the DK Metcalf is a little bit of a projection, right? So we all know he's the alpha, right? It's very clear to see that. But Tyler Lockett being 30, going on 31, really in the last deal of that structured contract, and maybe they restructure him a little bit to keep him there past the age of 30. But you got to imagine that production that we've seen from Tyler Lockett and the consistency that we saw this year is going to start to go away a little bit. And I think DK is going to really turn in to the focal point of that offense. So it's a little bit of a projection for me in that regard. And then Tyreek Hill is just kind of a reiteration of what I talked about, right? 27 is prime. He's not an old wide receiver. Now, the question mark for me around Tyreek, and maybe I've got him a little high, is, okay, well, speed we typically see start to die down as the receiver's age goes up. We really haven't seen that from Tyreek Hill. And to be quite frank, we didn't really get to see that necessarily this year because every deep ball that was thrown was underthrown by 10 yards because Tua can't throw the long ball, right?
Exactly.
But we see Tyreek Hill go up and get it anyway. So I just trust his talent, regardless of who the quarterback is. We saw it with Teddy Bridgewater. We saw it with Skylar Thompson. It almost doesn't matter. Both of those guys not starting caliber quarterbacks, and Tyreek Hill is still producing on the field. So I'm comfortable with where he's at 27 because I still think you see a solid 3 years, and that's kind of my landmark. If I think they're going to give me 3 more years of kind of solid production at where they're at, I'm going to hold them in my rankings.
Yeah, and so, Jagger, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7. Is he still the one there with Jameson Williams?
Yes, because they do different things. And then I'm one that like we have a conversation about Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, which kind of debunks the idea that like you can't have usable fantasy receivers on the same team. Like T. Higgins is coming up on Brad's tier list over here. He's on mine as well. Like I'm comfortable having him on Ross St. Brown because I know what he's going to do regardless of Jameson Williams. He's going to eat and feast in the middle and intermediate areas of the field. And then Jameson Williams, you can, if you don't have him taking the top off the defense and working the deep routes, then you're just doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong. You're doing what Joe Lombardi was doing with the Chargers, and you don't want that. Yeah.
Well, and you look at this, and
you won't be doing it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I referenced this earlier, so we had this conversation a little bit with Alex, peaked in high school, and not all top 12 receivers or all top 12 running backs are RB1s, receiver ones. And so you may not be comfortable with some of these players being your wide receiver one, or you might be. Are you comfortable with all the guys we talked about and this grouping being your top number one receiver, Jagger?
I'm in Ross St. Brown is the last one that I'm comfortable with. Every other one, I would hope to get one of the guys from the last tier, or I'm rebuilding, because I'm looking at, the assets that I have, like my Drake London teams, those are very young rosters, or Drake London is like my wide receiver 3, and I just got lucky and drafted value or traded him when you should have gotten him, which is immediately after you knew Marcus Mariota was going to be his quarterback. It takes value, so like that's where I'm at. Like, and that's to me the difference between like a winning roster and then a roster where you have assets to trade to make a winning roster. Because that's where we're at this tier now, that if I'm wanting to win, like I got decent running back, 2 top 12 quarterbacks. Now I want to move one of these guys plus like a second rounder or a low first because you're going to win. And then I'm going to go get AJ Brown. I'm going to go get Jamar Chase or something like that. And that just puts you over the top.
Yeah. And Chris Olave is one of those guys where, he's clearly the number one on that team. We don't know what's going to happen with the, with the quarterback position. And, he could easily move up a couple spots on here with the change of quarterback. But he's a guy that solidified himself, and going back to the reception perception, I mean, everything on there screamed this guy's going to be an absolute stud.
Yeah, he's a beast.
I mean, it was literally like green is good, and everything was green. This guy's going to be good. Like I just, I remember reading that and then instantly trading up in the draft, overpaying just so I could go get Chris Olave. And I'm like, I probably could have got him at 109. I just had to go get some Chris Olave.
Make sure you get him, and now you look like a genius because that's still like that's too cheap. That's too cheap. That's like Drake London right now. I want him. If I don't have him, I'm sending out trades to spam to get him because like you want to talk like the reception perception as it came out on what he's done in the NFL. I don't think yet, but like the PFF score, like I think Daniel Jeremiah or someone covered that. Like he has one of the highest PFF scores for rookie wide receiver ever. And then you want to think about for prototypical size, he has it. So like to me, like because I don't know if Drake London's my wide receiver 1, that's one where he could be, someone that's going to be a stud next year. We don't know that yet. We just haven't seen it. So you want to talk about projecting out. That's a guy I'm incredibly bullish on.
Yeah, and I got some polls on Twitter, did some Dynasty price checks, and I'm not going to talk about full details, but it is interesting how they would much rather, the pick over the player. But then when you lay down the players next to them, like if I said Drake London or 104 in a super flex, they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm taking the 104 over Drake London. Then I'm like, would you want Drake London or Jackson Smith and Jigba? Well, Drake London. And I'm like, you just said you wanted the 104. Like, what are you going to do with it? And, but like T. Higgins going back to the Jalen Waddle conversation, like when Jamar Chase was out, T. Higgins balled out. But he was barely a wide receiver 2 last year, and he still was a dynasty. He holds the value, and still this year. I mean, people are especially looking forward to the 2024 free agency and hoping that he goes somewhere else. But you're gonna have to take your lumps this year because you're not gonna get wide receiver 1 production on a consistent basis from T. Higgins, and he still is gonna have to be a top 12 asset because he's just a stud, and he's with Joe Burrow, and obviously with Jamar Chase, he has missed some time and things like that, but I just don't project T. Higgins to have a wide receiver one season in 2023.
Yeah, unless I don't know, if you're it's one of the various Twitter dream trades happen, and then like T. Higgins is like a Chicago Bear or something like that. And then it's like you said, like he's still super young. Like when he's a free agent, he's going to be 24 years old. So like wherever he goes, he's going to like T. Higgins is probably better than every starter on 30 teams right now. Probably better. Let's be honest. I'm a Patriots fan. I wish Bill Belichick would stop being cute and go get, like T. Higgins or something like that. But, we're not going to do that. We're going to get like Tank Dell or something like that.
And probably. We can move on to the next list, but I will say Stephon Diggs. I put him in my top 12. He's a guy that he's a little bit older, but he's still attached to Josh Allen. And he's one of the best in the game. He's probably going to be a top 5 receiver the next 2 years. And if you're going to get production, like that's where it's at. Stephon Diggs he's been very consistent last couple of years.
And this game translates long term.
Yep. So the next grouping is Devonta Smith, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin, and then Brandon Ayuk. So Jagger, you got Michael Pittman actually, Brad, you have Michael Pittman the highest. So Michael Pittman at 14. What are your thoughts there? Potentially got a rookie quarterback coming in. It could be a Will Levis, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. We don't know. Rookie quarterbacks, fantasy production is not always great. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. To me, he's very similar to the Drake London conversation, right? You got Drake London. We just talked about him in the tier ahead of this. There's a lot of quarterback uncertainty, but he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the skill set. And Matt Harmon, again, loved Michael Pittman going into the last season, and it just didn't come to fruition. Not at Michael Pittman's fault, but because of the quarterback play, that team just completely underperformed under Frank Reich, which is why he's no longer there anymore, right? So I think you're looking again at a projection here where I think Michael Pittman has the skill set. He's got the prototypical X size, and he's going to be on a team where he is the alpha. But not even if you bring that rookie quarterback in, they can lean on Jonathan Taylor. And when you lean on Jonathan Taylor and you have a rookie quarterback, the defenses are going to think they can stack the box against you. And I think Michael Pittman, if they bring back Paris Campbell with Alec Pierce, they've got some decent weapons on the outside to be a pretty productive offense in the grand scheme of things. So I can't justify dropping him outside of this tier just because of the upside and the skill set itself.
Agreed.
You had that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, like verbatim. So,
and then Jameson Williams makes your number 17, Jagger. So you talked about him being, a different skill set than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff had, kind of back to Jared Goff a couple years ago as far as fantasy production. Wouldn't say he's, a stud quarterback or anything, but he was a very solid quarterback too. And sometimes he has some quarterback one upside. Jameson Williams at 17.
This is me being ageist 100% because and this is a lot what you said about when you stack up the player against like a pick or whatever, that I think that Jameson Williams would be the number one wide receiver in this class. You could argue JSN, but I think he'd be the top wide receiver in this class, and he just got injured. So especially now that you're not even asking him to be a stud right off the bat, and you have to respect Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's going to open up wonders. And I think that he's just a boom and waiting. And another thing too, as anyone else, I can't trade for this guy for anything. So I'm surprised the consensus isn't higher, because me trying to acquire him all off season, it's been impossible. So I'm surprised the consensus isn't higher.
Yeah. It's some of these guys we've already talked about, are pretty much impossible unless you were willing to pay double.
Yeah.
I have Cooper Kupp the highest. I have him in that clump of, these are wide receiver ones for the next year or two. They're older, but if you're a contender based on Jagger and Brad's boards compared to mine, I think Cooper Kupp is someone that is a buy low right now. I think you could go and get him for a late first. and some people could jump at that. Might need to throw in a younger receiver or something like that with it, but Cooper Kupp's kind of thought about, and so and I'll be honest, putting him at 14, I was a little hesitant to do that, but he's a guy that you're gonna get for wide receiver 2 cost, and he's gonna give you wide receiver 1 production. It's still McVay, it's still Stafford. He's gonna get 160, 170 targets next year, and if you're a contender, it's a perfect player to add to your squad to just put you over the top or just to solidify a good team. A couple other players on here. We'll talk about Deebo Samuel in a bit because I'm a big hater on Deebo Samuel. I got him pretty low on my list. Deebo Samuel at 18, Jaggers.
That one I regret a little bit, to be honest, now because I think I made this like I filled this out pretty fast, like five days ago or something, and now I'm in a startup, and I would rather have Brandon Ayuk, I think, but I think I'd just rather have Brandon Ayuk, and I don't know why I did this now, to be honest.
Well, we'll move on to the guy that I think deserves his flowers. Devonta Smith, 2 years into the league, has jumped up to where he's a borderline top 12 dynasty asset. He's debunked the whole he's not going to be big enough, tough enough. This guy took some shots. I think it was 3 out of the first 5 plays in the Super Bowl, and he just got lit up. And I was like, this guy is going to be carried off the field before the drive's over. And he makes a big play. And so I think for his size, he's really, really debunked a lot of things. And he's one of the biggest risers for me personally. And, I can see on your guys' boards, I had him the lowest.
Yeah, I have him at 11, so I have him in the top 12.
Yeah. So next grouping, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see, I'm with you, Jagger. I got Brandon Ayuk ahead of Deebo. I had Chase Vernon from he's with Fancy Intervention and Trophy Smack. Had him on the show, and him and I were going back and forth about Terry McLaurin and Brandon Ayuk earlier last year, and he still can't believe me that Brandon Ayuk's worth more than Terry McLaurin, but still there.
I agree. So
19, Marquise Brown, Deebo Samuel at 20, DJ Moore at 21, Cooper Kupp at 22, Jameis Williams at 23, Terry McLaurin at 24. So, Brad, you got Calvin Ridley here at 21. We haven't seen Calvin Ridley play in 10 years. He's expected to be reinstated. He's going there. There's still Zay Jones. They're talking about bringing Evan Ingram back. Christian Kirk's there. Trevor Lawrence is a stud, but is there going to be enough food on the plate there for Mr. Ridley?
Yeah, he's immediately the best wide receiver on that team. He's different than anybody else on there. There's nobody on that team that is that route runner that Calvin Ridley is. He's been known for that ever since his days at Alabama, and he's not going to just forget how to do that. It's not like the dude's not been working out since he's been suspended for his, 14 games or however many it was this year. Was it the whole season? I feel like he played a couple games.
The whole season, yeah.
For some reason, I thought he played a couple games.
It was the year before. That was the year before. He played a couple games. Then he stepped away for personal matters.
The moral to the story, kids, is don't bet on your team. Period. Don't bet on sports if you're playing sports. Either way, not to get down the rabbit hole.
Don't bet on the Falcons, regardless.
Yeah, but he does. He steps in. He's immediately the best player on the team at the wide receiver position. Even if they bring back Evan Ingram, he's still the best guy on the field. And this is a function of Trevor Lawrence. You said it earlier. He's a stud. And with a wide receiver like Calvin Ridley in that offense, Doug Peterson knows how to scheme these guys open. Just look at what he was able to do with the mess that was the Jacksonville Jaguars in one offseason. Now imagine that continued offseason. They traded for Ridley. He's got the playbook. He had it for probably the back half of the season. He's going to get to do offseason workouts with him. He's going to be ready to go. Now, the bye window may be 3 weeks into the season, 4 weeks into the season, because he's going to come in and he's just not going to be in football shape. right? A lot of people may not recognize like, hey, this dude, yeah, he's been working out, but there's a difference between workout shape and game shape, right? So it's going to take him a few games to get into that, but I think he's going to be a huge smash play this season. And to me, it's unimaginable, barring injury, knock on wood, that he's not a top 24 wide receiver this season.
And Jahan Dotson, you got him at 20 there, Jagger?
Yeah, I think I'm probably one of the most bullish people on Jahan Dotson. I know a lot of this kind of depends on what they're going to do with their quarterback situation. I'm not the biggest Sam Howell fan, but like I like to come out of college. Like I feel like Jahan Dotson has been slept on since he was at Penn State. I think that he is a crafty route runner, and he's now proven that he can win deep at the NFL level. I don't know what more you can ask for. And I know a lot of people talk about touchdowns, but like it's almost like you're knocking him for doing a good job at finding the end zone. Like I know that'll come down, but like towards the tail end of the season, the targets went up, and then people still don't like him. I just don't get it. And now again, we talked about multiple wide receivers being viable to your fantasy team, even though that they're sharing a receiver room with someone else. I don't think Terry McLaurin is that much of a steep drop off in talent than Jahan Dotson anymore. So I think it only helps them that someone else is across the field to take away coverage. And honestly, if let's say that we keep talking about Derek Carr, like whoever ends up going there, I think it could be a boom. Let's say they draft a guy even. I think that could really unlock Jahan Dotson to be a PPR boom, because like if he can win deep, all you need to do is have a guy who can throw it across the middle of the field and not hit a linebacker. That's the key.
Yeah, I mean they were definitely tied to Jimmy Garoppolo last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see what this Eric Bieniemy offense looks like. A lot of the players, LaShawn McCoy was out there talking. It wasn't good stuff about Bieniemy. And he was talking about how Bieniemy is really in charge of the running game. And when it comes down to the passing game, he didn't have anything to do with it. And so we will see. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We've got a new system there. And they still got, other playmakers with Curtis Samuel and with Terry McLaurin. I do like Dotson, and the reason I'm lower on him again is more because I'm basing it on trade value. Not a lot of people are that high on him. So if you do have him on your team, I'm not sure what you can get for him in trade right now, and he might be another player that you can buy low with all this rookie fever. I don't know if you can get an early seconds, probably a little bit too low, but I don't know. People get so excited about these rookies, and they just completely forget about these 2022 players, which, by the way, there's probably some silly receipts out there because 2023 class is really good, but was way overhyped. And, I'm guilty of falling into it too. But this 2022 class deserved a lot more credit. There was a lot of very good players, and it was underhyped because there was so much hype for 2023.
I was in the camp that I said that the 2022 class was the year that you draft your receiver. If your team needs a receiver, go get one. I think that they were all good and they all proved it right. Like Jahan Dotson is a prime example. You could have got him in the second round a lot.
Second round. Second round.
Exactly. Like even Wan'Dale Robinson in the third, we don't really know what he is yet, but he has a little bit of dynasty value, and you can't say that for a lot of third round picks,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and so I have Christian Watson on here, and I was a hater, absolute hater last year on Christian Watson. And I was wrong. Like I was totally wrong on this guy. I thought he was just way too raw. It's going to be another one of these guys that the NFL is just you finally like meet equal athletes, and you're not going to be able to do that. No, like this guy is a supreme athlete, and you've seen the upside. Like this is the upside that we hope that Jameson Williams is going to have. We saw it. Like we saw him with multiple touchdown games. And I know Jordan Love is likely the quarterback at this point, could be another person, but this guy absolutely looks great out there when he was healthy. And, I do think the way that he played last year showed that he's the number one and that the team really believes in him. And, I think that he could be one of those guys that has some trade value if you put him on the market. And then the other guy I have on here that no one else had so far, actually, Jagger and I are both lockstep with Jerry Jeudy. Jagger, I'll give you first mic. Jerry Jeudy.
I'm buying Sean Payton. That's what I think that Jerry Jeudy is better than Cortland Sutton, and Sean Payton coming in immediately makes that entire offense better. Like, I've never disliked Jerry Jeudy as a talent. The Broncos have just been a disaster. So Sean Payton being there, to me, Jerry Judy's probably still low enough to where he's a buy. And like to me, he has, like, this is a tier of guys that you think have the upside to finish top 12. Jerry Jeudy is right there for me.
Yeah, and I got Christian Kirk above Calvin Ridley. I know we talked about those two guys. I like both. Christian Kirk, he's been with the team for a year. He's got more chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. We've seen it. Calvin Ridley, there's a little bit unknown. And again, I just think Calvin Ridley right now, like, the value is just super low. And he's someone, if you're thinking the same thing as Brad, he's going to be a top 24 receiver. I mean, he's not going to cost you much to acquire. And he's definitely someone I'm interested in. Brad, anyone else on your list you want to talk about?
No, I think the biggest outlier here, if people have been looking at these and listening in, is the Marquise Brown at 19. There's a reason Marquise Brown's at 19. That's because I have him in my top 12. And you all don't have him in the top 24 yet, right? So, again, I have been a huge believer of Hollywood Brown for his entire career in the NFL. I think he is an underrated route runner. I think people don't give him the respect that he really probably deserves in that aspect of the game, because he is thought of as that guy that ran a 4.3 whatever in the combine, and he's this speed guy and this and that. And I think his value is even more depressed right now because of the Kyler Murray injury. But if you want to go all the way back to college where these guys played together, he had 1,300 yards with Kyler Murray his last season in Oklahoma. And then you turn around and he comes to the NFL and he shows everything that he can do with the deep ball. Now, he does have some drop issues or whatever. He leaves Baltimore, comes to Arizona, and in Arizona, in those first 6 games, from a fantasy perspective, he's like a top 15 wide receiver. He had like 35 targets, I think, through the first 6 weeks. He had a game that had 14 targets. He had 4 touchdowns. Like, he was and I get it, Nuke wasn't playing, but that's what you're projecting at right now. They're not going to pay DeAndre Hopkins this season. There's all that talk about how he's gone already. And we could have told you that in the offseason that they were going to make that move away from him. And now you got the new offense coming in, the new coordinators coming in. It's going to be a very interesting scenario. I just think Marquise Brown is a smash buy. And that's why I put him at 12, because I feel like that's communicating to people you need to go get him at the market price that he's at right now, because I don't know that he's going to go much lower than that.
Yeah, honestly, I'm at a range now where I can't really argue with anyone having, like, nothing's too crazy at this range here. And I don't know what Marquise Brown is. Like, I know what he is as a player, but now that Rich Gannon's taken over as a coach, we have no Kyler Murray. D-Hop, in theory, is not going to be there, but what if he is? So that's my only reason. But everything you said, but like Marquise Brown, I've been high on, same as you. You want to talk about upside right now? Like, if you want to look at like mine and Dave's rankings, that Marquise Brown's a good buy. I actually just sold Marquise Brown, but it was to get Devontae Smith, so it was like to hop tier.
Yeah.
Exactly. So but if you just need a receiver, he's probably a good budget guy with upside.
Yep,
for sure. All right, last grouping. I know we got to go. We got bedtimes coming up.
Oh yeah. They're winding down up there. I can already hear it.
All right, so we got Christian Watson, George Pickens, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, and Treylon Burks. So, Brad, George Pickens, he's been your guy all season. I'll let you talk about him.
This is the guy that just catches my eye on the field. When you watch him, you're like, this dude is good. This dude is legitimate. This dude dominated as a freshman at Georgia and just couldn't get healthy all the way, right? He comes into the league and shows some of these just ridiculous body control catches, and we just need that volume to get there. And I think that volume is going to come. To me, it's pretty clear but you could argue Pat Freiermuth, but he is definitely the favorite wide receiver target for Kenny Pickett in that offense. And that's what I want to see. I want to see him grow with Kenny Pickett in that offense a little bit. I want Matt Canada to pull his head out of his, we'll keep it PG here. But I just want to see more volume go George Pickens' way, because I really do believe he's the most dynamic talent on that offense right now, really at any position, regardless.
Yeah, and Jagger, you had Deontay Johnson in your last group, and so you were the highest on him. So let's talk a little about Deontay Johnson.
I like Deontay Johnson because he is a proven separator, and like he was so low this year because of touchdowns, and to be honest, that's not a sticky stat. And you want someone who has gotten that many targets literally has never ever gone an entire season without a touchdown. And I love George Pickens, but like I need more nuance for him to be more than just Gabe Davis, if that makes sense. Like I feel like George Pickens is a super talented Gabe Davis, and I need him to develop nuance. And nuance in route running is hard to develop, So maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But I bet on Craftsman, and Deontay Johnson's still 25 years old, so that's the only big difference.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because the Steelers are one of the few teams that I trust to develop wide receivers. They've done it time and time again, whether you're talking Emmanuel Sanders or Mike Williams or Antonio Brown, all these third or later wide receivers, they just continue to develop. They did it with Deontay Johnson. Now, he was a second-round pick, but they just always have these guys that their squad is just solid at developing in that position. I love Deontay Johnson. He just needs to run forward when he catches the ball instead of backwards. Like, I want to say it was through the first 4 weeks of the season, he had damn near close to negative yards after the catch. Like, he is
trying to do too much.
What's that?
He's trying to do too much.
Yeah, like he is. You're right. He's open every single time. Every play you watch, he makes corners look stupid. Like, he's really good. But he just get the yardage, man. Just run forward a little bit, get that yardage, and you'd be so much happier with the stat line with him by the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jagger, this is the first time we've seen Rashad Bateman's name, and he's all very close for all of us. Rashad Bateman we saw last year. A lot of people say the concern with him is the efficiency. He was just a hyper-efficient player last year. I was a big fan of him coming out. And I think he's not just a big play receiver. And to be honest, I didn't think that was part of his game I was most interested in. And then last year, they kind of turned him into a big play receiver a couple times, 4 or 5 targets a game, but getting touchdowns almost every game. So Rashad Bateman in the top 30. What do you got?
For me, it's like you said, I believe in the talent, and what a lot of people don't understand with Greg Roman's offense is that it's built on efficiency. Like the running backs were efficient. Lamar Jackson's running was efficient. They don't pass very often, so when they do, it's easy to be efficient. So again, these are things that aren't necessarily sticky, but I understand where some people, like myself, will still willing to bet on the talent. And now that Todd Monken's in, I don't know what they're going to be. So a guy with Rashad Bateman's talent, I'm going to hope that Todd Monken's going to find a way to get him the ball and up the tempo of the offense a little bit, so there's just more opportunity across the board.
Yeah, I like the Monken hire. Last guy that I'm going to bring up is Deebo Samuel, and that's just because I hate the guy, I guess. I don't hate Deebo Samuel. I just think that we've seen 4 years of Deebo Samuel, and we've seen 6 good weeks. And we, launched him up into a top 5 dynasty receiver last year for no good reason. I mean, he was speaking of efficiency, he had efficiency, but he was also being used in a playoff format as a running back that would never happen. This is not going to happen for an 18-game season. And so that was kind of projected and baked into his cost last year. And he was a big bust because people were getting him in the first round or the first 10 picks. And so that's really kind of maybe went a little too far on 28, but I just think that you're not getting playoff Debo during the regular season. And for that reason, I'm out.
I like Craftsman. Brandon Ayuk. You want to talk about reception perception? This is a guy on film. He dominates. Like if you look at like a reel of Ayuk who just puts on a clinic on a defensive back and he doesn't get a ball, like that, it's Deontay Johnson and Brandon Ayuk of guys who are routinely open and do not get the ball. It's those two guys right there. That's why I hope Trey Lance kind of unlocks that talent and throws more than just like 15 yards downfield. That's why I don't like Brock Purdy, is that, like, again, he's not unlocking all of that offense. Brandon Ayuk is routinely open downfield. And that's why I like Ayuk more than Debo. Apparently when I made these rankings, I wasn't thinking, so I don't know.
Well, I'm definitely with you on that. I'm a big Brandon Ayuk fan for all the same reasons. Well, hey, we've gone through 30 players. I think it's time to call it a night. I appreciate your time. You've been really gracious with your time and knowledge. Again, please let everyone know where to find you, Jagger.
Again, Twitter's best place, Fantasy Blue Chip. Most of my content's over at DFF or Fantasy and Frames and 444.
And check him out on TikTok as well. I believe the same handle on TikTok.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Brad, thanks as always.
Cheers.
All right. Good luck this season.
All right.